evening. The board will now reconvene in open session at 7:18 p.m. on October 2nd, 2018 in the Plano ISD Administration Building. I'm Missy Bender, President of the Plano ISD Board of Trustees, and on the board's behalf, I wish to extend a warm welcome to all who are present and to our web and video viewers. We will conduct our meeting focusing on the district's two major ongoing goals: ensure continued improvement in student learning, and ensure efficient use of financial resources and budgeting. Let me introduce my fellow trustees and staff. Seated to my left are Sarah Bonzer, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Teresa Williams, Chief Operating Officer, Nancy Humphrey, Board Secretary, and Trustee Tammy Richards. Seated to my right are Board Vice President Dr. Yorm Solomon, Trustee David Stolley, Trustee Jerry Chambers, Trustee Angela Powell, and Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and Board of Trustees, Sharon Nowak. Ms. Bonzer, will you please verify that we are in compliance with the provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act regarding the notice for this meeting?
Thank you, President Bender. Yes, this meeting has been posted in compliance with the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you. This evening, we have an inspirational message, and that will be offered by Board Vice President Dr. Yorm Solomon.
Okay, I changed that this morning because this morning, as you may have noticed, we have a confirmation for a U.S. Supreme Court judge. And I'm not going to go into politics, but one of my daughters asked me, why did you wait 36 years? And it was an interesting question, and I tried to think about what is it that we need to give our kids. I have two daughters, and I wanted to make sure that whatever happens, that does not happen to them, or something like that does not happen to them. And I realized that we have a role as parents, as teachers, and we need to make sure that our kids know that lives matter. And they need to know that from four perspectives. One is that their lives matter, and that if somebody does something to them that is inappropriate, they need to stand up. They need to stand up for themselves because their lives matter. The second is that the life of other people matter. And we need to make sure that our kids that come through our schools know that the lives of their peers matter. That they cannot just bully and do whatever they want to do, because the lives of their peers matter. They need to know that it's not only about them. So I told my daughters that I want to make sure if something happens to you, you need to stop that, because you need to make sure that this does not happen to somebody else. And only if you stop that, you're going to be the one that breaks that cycle. It will not happen to somebody else. And finally, even think about the person who may have wronged you. If you don't let them know that that is wrong, you may put them on the wrong path in life. So in essence, I guess every moment is a teaching moment, and that's what I took with my daughters this morning. Their lives matter, and only if we teach them, as parents, as educators, only then we can stop them. Thank you.
This evening, we are privileged to have with us, leading the Pledge of Allegiance, the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps Color Guard from Plano Senior High School Wildcat Battalion. If everyone would now please stand.
Face. Forward. March. Up. 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 Right. Up. Up. March time. March. Up. Up. All right. Hold. Up. Face. Carry. Up. Raise that. Arm.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What? Okay. Up. Face. Forward. March. Up. 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 Right. Up.
Please be seated. JROTC students, thank you for being here with us this evening. And would you please come to the front as you're doing now and take a moment and please introduce yourselves and tell us how long you've been a member of the JROTC, please.
My name is Hannah Luke, and I've been in JROTC for now 4 years.
My name is Ryan Hurst, and I've been in JROTC for 4 years.
I'm Aviana Chappelle, and I've been in JROTC for 3 years.
I'm Brigham Johnson. I've been in JROTC for 3 years.
Thank you, students, for being here. Board members, do you have any comments that you'd like to share with the students?
It's wonderful to see your long-term dedication. We know it takes extra hours, extra preparation, but thank you for representing Plano so well.
And I wanted to add that serving in the military myself, I remember being in your age and doing pre-military service back in Israel. And I can tell you, you're going to get a lot from it. You're going to learn things that will put you in the right path for life. Thank you for making this a priority.
I really appreciate the commitment that you've shown to this program, and I think it just really develops great character in young people, and I wish you all the very best, and I appreciate that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to be here with us this evening.
And I've had a chance to visit one of your inspections before, maybe at not your school, but at Plano West. I was so impressed at the work that you guys do and the precision that you have. So as Norm said, it will prepare you for life. Good job. I had a conversation today with someone who talked about JROTC, and not all school districts in our community have such a program. So I want you all to be very grateful. The leadership opportunities you're getting are amazing, and you have a very special sponsor or guide in Colonel Roden, and I'm very appreciative of his leadership for you guys.
And I think you guys are doing a fabulous job. I have two sisters who are in the U.S. Air Force. And this program in our schools are great. Thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you, and you may continue your evening. Thank you. We will now move to the recognitions on the agenda. This evening, the board is proud to recognize the 112 National Merit 2019 semifinalists from Plano, Plano East, and Plano West Senior High Schools. The names of these academically talented students are scrolling on the presentation behind and in front of me. These high school seniors have an opportunity to continue in the competition for 7,500 National Merit Scholarships that are worth more than $31 million and offered next spring. To be considered for a Merit Scholarship Award, semifinalists must fulfill several requirements to advance to the finalist level of the competition. Over 90% of semifinalists are expected to attain finalist standing, and about half of the finalists will win a National Merit Scholarship, thereby earning the Merit Scholar title. Congratulations to these students for this outstanding achievement, and to the parents, teachers, and administrators that are behind these success stories. Let's applaud their accomplishments. We'd also like to recognize that October is National Principals Month throughout the country, and we honor the many school principals in Plano ISD by saying a few words of appreciation to them at this time. These school leaders fulfill many roles in their schools and in their communities. Principals are the instructional leaders of their campus. I like to say they're the CEO of that business, and they tirelessly collaborate to ensure that learning takes place. They guide student learning using best practices, inspiration, and aspiration, and they cultivate a culture that is inclusive of everyone. They use leadership concepts of team versus self. Principals build the atmosphere for parent, family, and campus communities. They serve as role models to children and adults. They are the heart of Plano ISD, the lifeblood of the district service to children, and the cultivation of a highly effective teaching staff. As members of the Board of Trustees, we're grateful for the visionary leadership of our early childhood, elementary, and secondary principals. We recognize the importance of their role, we applaud their contributions to their profession, and we celebrate their commitment to providing an excellent education for each and every student. As a board, we are sincerely thankful that they are a part of our Plano ISD family And I'd like to give any other board members a chance to make any comments at this time. Sarah, do you want to say anything about
I want to thank the board for taking a moment out of the schedule to thank our principals and to recognize them during this month. You'll notice that they are not in the room this evening. And that is because they put in a lot of hours during every work week and weekends and evenings on the job. And so in recognition and appreciation of them, we gave them the night off. So thanks for recognizing them, and I'll make sure that I bring these comments to the principals at the next principals meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. I know we expect a lot of them, and we're expecting more and more, and it's getting harder and harder to be a principal in today's time. So I'm very grateful for the efforts that all of our principals make. They make a difference.
Missy, before we go on, I do have a comment about the previous recognition.
Okay.
So every year the National Merit Semifinalist list comes out, and we always have 110-ish, we always have an amazing total. There were only 654 is what the article in the Dallas Morning News said. Kids from North Texas who are National Merit Semifinalists, and we have 112 of those. That's an amazing figure in and of itself that we would account for such a big portion of that. But we annually have more National Merit Semifinalists within our district than all of our neighboring districts combined. And so I think that speaks volumes to the work that our principals are doing and our staff and everybody in creating a rigorous academic environment for these students in which they can thrive. So I want to point that out because it's an amazing stat. Every year it's an amazing stat, and I think it's well worth recognition.
So there are two areas where Plano ISD really gets a disproportional part of participation in general, and that's the National Merit Scholars and Recapture. But since we're talking about principals, there are two principals I do want to recognize. One of them is Principal Sprott, the principal of Hightower Elementary School. That was the first principal that ever took Maya, my first daughter, ripped her away from my arms because Maya would not want to go to school at kindergarten. And Shira, our younger daughter now, is doing what do we call it? Education
and training. Education and training class.
Okay, education and training, and she's doing it in that school. And the other one is actually one that my wife kept telling me she really appreciated that principal that was always waiting outside of school with a cup of coffee and welcoming everyone to school that morning. That was the previous principal of Jasper High School, Carrie Cooper.
Well, I always thought Dr. Cooper had a clone when he was principal of Murphy Middle School. He was everywhere.
All right, thank you. We'll now move to the introduction of public comments. And this particular point in time in our agenda is where we listen to comments related to agenda items. For the public comment session, public comment cards are accepted from 6 to 7 p.m. and persons who wish to participate complete a card before the meeting begins indicating the topic. Cards are not accepted after 7 p.m. and are not transferable to other speakers. All cards were collected and given to Carla Oliver, Assistant Superintendent for Government, Community, and Planning Initiatives, or a representative of the Communications Department. 30 minutes in total have been allotted to hear persons who desire to make comments to the board. 15 minutes will be allotted at this particular time for speakers wishing to address the board about a topic on the agenda. At the conclusion of the agenda, speakers who wish to address the board about non-agenda topics will be allotted 15 minutes to speak. Delegations of more than 5 persons shall appoint 1 person to present their views before the board. Ms. Oliver, do we have any speakers for the public comment session regarding agenda topics?
We do. We have 1 non-agenda speaker.
Okay. So the non-agenda item will be the last item that we cover this evening. And in anticipation of that, I will read the language that pertains to the way and the appropriate way to make comments. No presentation shall exceed 3 minutes. If you are not finished speaking at the end of your time, I will kindly interrupt you so that we can move to the next person. Pursuant to board policies BED Legal, BED Local, and BED Exhibit, the board may place reasonable restraints on the number, length, and frequency of presentations so long as it does not unfairly discriminate among speakers based upon their viewpoint. The board is not authorized to discuss the public's comments if the subject is not on the agenda. If a member of the public inquires about a subject for which notice has not been given, the board may only do one of three things: make a statement of specific factual information, recite existing policy in response to the inquiry, or refer the person to a staff member for more information. If the subject of the public comment is already on the agenda for the meeting, the board may invite the speaker to stay until the board reaches that topic on the agenda. Finally, pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.074 and 551.0821, the board will not permit the presentation of personally identifiable information regarding a student, and will not discuss the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee. Wish we could shorten this. A speaker must address these issues through the appropriate local grievance policies. All right. At this point in time, we'll now continue with the rest of the agenda, and then we will call the speaker at the appropriate time at the end of the meeting. Yes.
President Bender, I did want to mention that we have a Boy Scout troop here that we'd like to recognize, and that's group 2054.
Okay. Could we have you stand, please? All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Okay, the next section on the agenda is Section 8. Topic is consent agenda. This includes items of a routine and or recurring nature that are grouped together under one action item. Board members, are there any requests to remove items from the consent agenda for further and separate consideration? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move that the board approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion by Yoram Solomon and a second by Nancy Humphrey that the Board of Trustees approves the consent agenda. We will now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. With the approval of the consent agenda, we have one administrative appointment. And I would now like to invite Randy McDowell, Chief Financial Officer, to introduce our new administrator in the Financial Services Department. Randy.
Yes, thank you, President Bender. I think all the board is aware that we have some very tenured leadership that's going to be retiring from the Finance Department. And you just approved the hiring of the Director of Accounting to replace one of those. And that person is Angela Marks Cosby. If you would please stand, Angela. Angela's been with the district for 3 years as an accountant, and she has an extensive accounting experience prior to that. Angela's very smart, she's very hardworking, and she's very well respected by her peers. She has a very bright future, and we're glad that she's committed to moving up and advancing her career here at Plano ISD. Angela has her family with her. She has her husband, Jeff, if you would stand, and 2 beautiful children, Alexa and Zach. So we're very excited about her advancement in the Finance Department.
Well, congratulations. We're glad to have you in this new role, Angela, and we'd like to take a moment with your family. If you would step outside with Ms. Hayward and have a photo so that we can commemorate this special occasion. Thank you. We'll now move to item 10. This is items for discussion and action. Our first item this evening supports the district's goal to ensure financial resources and budgeting. Item A1. This is the consideration of a board adoption of a resolution approving investment policy, investment strategies, investment training providers, and investment broker-dealers. At this time, the board will review its investment policy, strategies, and training providers as it is required to do annually by the Public Funds Investment Act. Randy McDowell, Chief Financial Officer, will begin the presentation this evening.
And I'm going to begin and hand off the torch to Ms. Linda Madden, the Executive Director of Financial Services.
Good evening, President Bender and Superintendent Bonser. We're here tonight to do just what you just described. The Public Funds Investment Act does require us on an annual basis to approve our investment policy, approve the list of brokers and dealers that we work with, Also to look at our investment strategies and the providers of investment training, and there is required investment training for all investment officers of the district. Tonight we also have with us, and they're going to be part of our presentation tonight, the gentleman that we work with at Hilltop Securities, or First Southwest Asset Management, that is a holding company of Hilltop Securities. We have Scott McIntyre, who is the managing director there, and Dan Grant, who is the portfolio manager. For many years, the district has taken a very active approach to the investment function in our department. We strive to obviously preserve the principal and the safety of that principal, but also meet our cash flow liquidity needs while earning, maximizing returns as best as we can in whatever the current market conditions may be that we're working in. And First Southwest Asset Management is just a key partner, a key advisor in that process. The day-to-day investment management duties of the portfolio are something that I do along with a couple of the ladies, Angela being one of those, and Sally Winches, that is a part of our finance team. But it is really through First Southwest that they do that frontline interface with the broker-dealers, so that certainly takes that off our backs, and we don't have to deal with what that may be, sometimes a little bit of a hassle. And then they also obviously have access to what is available on a day-to-day basis and can advise us when we have funds to invest, and just are a real asset to us, I feel, in a long-term relationship that we have had with them. As part of the agenda tonight, in your package, you do have it's a consolidated resolution this year where we've put everything in one nice long resolution for you to look at our policy, the broker-dealers, the investment training providers, our strategy, everything is in there together. We have provided reference documents. I think Exhibit A is the list of the independent training investment providers. Then Exhibit B is the list of our broker-dealers that we work with, and then we have a short Exhibit C that is annual investment report. And then Scott McIntyre is going to join us now and do a little bit of a brief economic review with you, and then highlight some of the key achievements and information from our 2017-18 investment report.
Okay. Linda warned me about this microphone. I don't speak real loud, so just raise your hands if I need to speak louder. Okay. There are a number of events that are driving yields right now in the market. We're investing on the short end of the yield curve because almost everything that the district does is very cash flow driven. We need to make sure that whatever we purchase is going to fund whatever expenses you have, whether it's your payrolls, which are large, or whether it's your debt service payments, your water payments, whatever it happens to be. But we still keep a close eye on the economic data to see whether the market offers value and at what point it does. And right now, of course, the Fed has been tightening rates. They've been raising rates. They started doing that a couple of years ago. They were at 0 for 7 long years. Most people didn't think that was possible to get to 0 or stay there for any length of time. And they've been tightening since then. And last year, well, actually last year and this year, they've gotten a little bit more aggressive in their rate increases. So there have actually been 3 so far this year, and there may well be a 4th in December. So obviously that's affecting not only what you're earning, but also the position of the portfolio. And we expect that's going to continue to be the case for a while anyway. The data has been very strong, at least recently. It was a really strong second quarter. It looks like it was a just completed third quarter that was very strong. We paid for it with a large tax cut, and so you expect to get some bang for the buck, and we certainly have seen that at least in the last couple quarters. And then finally, in terms of what's driving rates higher right now, there's a tremendous amount of new Treasury supply. They just announced today that the national debt, or the deficit for the year, is actually $1.27 trillion, which is a lot more than anybody anticipated that it would be in 2018. So to fund that, the Treasury issues new debt, and the more debt they issue, the more the market has to absorb it, and the more rates go up. So it's those 3 factors right now that are pushing rates up. And a lot of that rate increase has been very, very recent. I'll get back to that. Some things that are potentially going to be obstacles You guys read the papers, you know that there's an ongoing trade squabble with in particular China. And that really could be a problem going forward. A lot of the broker-dealers that we talk to on a daily basis feel like, number one, China's not incentivized to resolve that before our elections because they understand exactly how much power they have before the elections take place. There's also reason to believe that China may be looking for other markets besides us. So they've dropped tariffs to some of the other countries, seeing if they can find the other markets. So that is potentially disruptive going forward. Overseas interest rates, I know you probably, with all you have to do, don't pay too much attention to what's going on in Germany, for instance, but their 5-year rate is negative. The central bank's rate in Europe, the European Central Market, the European Central Bank, their overnight rate is negative 40 basis points. So there's no incentive to save your money. They hope that you'll spend it. The longer rates are negative overseas, the more that will put downward pressure on our rates. Because if you're an international investor, you'd rather have our 2-year note at 280 than a German bond at negative 67, whatever it happens to be. So overseas interest rates we're keeping an eye on. They're exerting some downward pressure. A lot of other global concerns right now. I'm not going to go into any detail, but there's trouble right now in Italy and Turkey and Spain. And Europe in particular, I think, is real vulnerable. So, when I look out into the future for the economy, if I look out between now and the next few months, things look just fine. But beyond that, it really gets cloudy and it really gets rocky. This is quarterly GDP growth. This is the report card. The bars are quarters. As you can see, the second quarter was actually the highest growth since 2014. And right now it looks like the third quarter, although there's lots of numbers that have to come in, but it looks like it was roughly as strong. This is the Fed funds rate, and it doesn't go back too far, but this is the overnight rate, and you can see that flat line is 0, and it's been stair-stepping higher. Of course, we like that from the district's perspective because especially when your tax money comes in, we're not going to be investing it at 1/10 of 1%, which was the case 3 years ago. But my best guess is that by the time we get to December, you're going to be looking at overnight rates that are approaching 250. So
was it 0 or 0.25?
Well, it's a range, and that's a good point. It was in a range of 0 to 0.25. So effectively, the bottom end of that range was 0, and that's really where Treasuries traded. Treasuries actually traded at negative rates for a while, even here in the U.S. So moving higher, so it's a positive thing. It's a double-edged sword because securities that may not have matured yet, that you bought 6 months ago, may have small unrealized losses. Because when rates go up, prices go down. It's an inverse relationship. That works its way out. Your portfolio is very short. This is a little bit hard for me to see. I'm not sure whether to use my reading glasses but this is what your portfolio looks like. And if you compare 2017 to 2018, you can see that on June 30th of 2017, at the end of the year, your portfolio yield here was 1.02. A year later, it's 1.80. As we've driven forward, your yield has progressively climbed. Best bet is you're very close to 2% by the time you get to the end of September. We don't have reports out yet, but that's my guess. You can see, if you look at the bar graph down there at the bottom, how the maturities are stacked. And that second stack is in the 90 days and in category, which is, you've got a lot of maturities coming up. If you divide up the portfolio and look at what you've invested in, you have a small percentage in banks deposits right now because that's the lowest yielding thing. You guys do a lot of commercial paper. It's all the highest rated possible commercial paper. It's about 47%. You have 21% in U.S. Treasuries, and right now that percentage could easily be growing because there's more value in Treasuries than there's been in days gone by. But the portfolio is of the highest quality. Everything is either secured with collateral, or it's AAA, or it's A1, which is the highest in the short-term scale. So, and again, I think because of the way this is stacked, you're going to find out that it'll look considerably better next year. This is a benchmark comparison. You guys are the purple line there. The district is the purple line. There's the 1-year constant maturity treasury, that's the blue line. We use that because people intuitively understand what the 1-year constant maturity treasury is. We feel like it's a good representation. This portfolio is above that. Typically when the Fed is aggressively raising rates, it's not unusual to get behind your benchmarks for a brief period of time, but over a longer period of time, as you can see on the tail end of this, you've been outperforming very nicely. And a lot of what you do, again, is cash flow driven, and you're a very conservative account. So the factors that are driving the investment decisions that we make with Linda in the district are investment policy. You have a restrictive TASB, CDA legal and local policy. It allows you to have enough discretion to be able to find good investments, but of course it sort of also makes sure that you don't lose principal. And our objectives and your policy objectives are safety first. So again, everything is the highest quality. You also have to make sure that everything is liquid, that securities are maturing in time to pay your bills, as I had said before, and then yield is the last in the 3 objectives. Your approach has always been active. You make sure that everything's employed. You don't have any money sitting in the bank earning zero. That's never going to be the case. Everything is employed, and you're conservative. Cash flows here are cyclical. Most of your money comes in from December 15th to February 15th, and it gets basically matched at that point to what we feel like the cash flow needs are going to be for the remainder of the year. In fact, if you look at that, there's 3 years worth of cash flow on the bars, and you can really see in that case how your balances fluctuate in a very, very solid cyclical pattern.
But one interesting thing is that from 2016 to 2017, January has $100 million more, and then through 18, about, $70 million more. Why is that upward trend?
Well, all of your, there's a lot of reasons now. Your bond issues flow in and out of this because your portfolio is consolidated, and that's a large part of it. And then really what you receive to the state and what you pay from the state. And I probably am not able to get into your specific cash flow here. Did you want to add to that?
I can touch on that. So there were some pretty significant bond issues the last 2 years. What's the timing of those? Because as Scott said, they're all blended into these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, as our property values keep going up and our recapture keeps going up, we do collect that money in December, January, and February, and then we start paying that to the state in February. And so it does make our peak in January higher than it was historically, because we have another $50-something million of tax collections this year, and this will go up again for this coming year, but it's following that same trend of our taxes going up and our recapture.
So our overall collections.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
So how long do we hold on to that recapture money earning 2% before we have to pay it over?
Well, we start making those payments in February 15th. And so then there's 7 payments through August. Yeah. So we do earn a little bit of interest on it while we have it.
Well, I mean, I'm sitting here listening to this, and I'm thinking to myself, if we're getting a 2% yield on this money that we're investing, and our bond issuances are 2%, I mean, there are some of those are below 2%, meaning we're at essentially an equal amount of, we're earning enough to pay the interest. Is that can I look at it that way?
I mean, that's a simplified way to look at it.
Well, I like simple.
Yes.
I went to A&M.
What do you think about the 6 viewers who are going to be watching this on TV?
I'll probably hear from 0 of them.
Okay, so fiscal year highlights, and it's always good, I think, to look at where you are now relative to where you were. So fiscal year 2018, I don't think the earnings were 10.7 million. And if you go back to fiscal year 16, they were 1.6. Best guess, if I had to make a guess, if your balance was roughly what it was, I would say that fiscal year 19, you'd be looking at somewhere around 15.5 in terms of earnings. It could be a little bit higher depending on exactly the shape of the yield curve, but we're definitely heading in the right direction because every dime makes a difference. So that's a positive. Trade volume, your maturities totaled almost 1.2 billion. They came off the books at a 134 yield, and then new purchases were 1.24 billion, and they came on at 172. Remember, a lot of those came on the books, December, January, February, and since then we've actually had 3 rate increases. So the next time they're going to look dramatically different, which is a positive. Your weighted average maturity as of your end of your fiscal year was 93 days. That's very, very short. It's down from 183 days the previous year. There's a couple reasons for that, but the primary reason is that the market really didn't price in the increases. So the question is, are you willing to put securities on the books? Would you rather go out longer and lock in yields that are low, or go out shorter and lock in yields that are a little bit lower but are going to reset higher as you go along? So most of our portfolios will end up being shortened, just anticipation of what the Fed was going to do. So the outlook, and I think it's the final slide. I didn't want to take up too much of your time here, but this Fed is expected to raise rates in December. That could get derailed by whatever's going on with trade. There's also a likelihood that they raise rates in March of 2019. Both of those are already priced into the market, which means that if your money is to come in December and it makes sense and it's still priced into the market, regardless of what the Fed does, you'll still get paid for it. In other words, if you've got $10 million to invest, you can go out 6 months and probably at that time pick up a 260. And then, as the Fed stair steps up, you're already compensated up front, and that's always what we hope for. If the market already gives it to us, we feel like, yes, we can confidently step in, and we would do that. As of August 31st, 89% of the portfolio was scheduled to mature within 6 months. Whenever the Fed's raising rates, that's good. If the Fed was in a cutting mode, then we would hope that you had secured some of those if possible. Right now, the idea is they're going to move up for a while. Future rate environment, your tax revenue is expected to be invested at, as I said several times, I know I'm getting redundant on that, but at a significantly higher rate this go around. So, and I do want to emphasize just finally that this is a really conservative way of managing money. The idea of losing money is not something that any of us want to deal with. So, it's all government securities, and if it's not a government security, it's the highest rating that we can find. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Any questions?
You already have.
I don't have a question, but I do want to just recognize the work that you guys do, and Linda and Randy. Our financial advisors, whether it's our bond advisors or whether it's y'all, are top notch, and y'all do a phenomenal job of keeping this district with utilizing the smartest financial decisions that we can, and being able to stretch our dollars as far as they go. And so I just want to express my gratitude for all of you all for that.
Thank you for that.
All right,
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you all.
And so, President Bender, as Linda talked about, there is a resolution included in this item. That is the only action item. And to hit the highlights that Linda also hit, it just confirms that you were presented the annual investment report. It does establish the 2018-2019 investment strategy. It designates the investment officers of the district by position. It approves the investment training providers in an Exhibit A that's attached. And it also approves the broker-dealers that were authorized to use in Exhibit B. So just to tell you what is recapped in the resolution.
All right, so thank you for that summary. And at this time, Board Secretary Nancy Humphrey will read the actual resolution. Following that activity, then I will question the board to consider its passage.
All right, buckle your seatbelts. Here we go. Plano Independent School District Resolution approving investment policy, investment strategies, investment training providers, and investment broker-dealers. Whereas on October 2nd, 2018, the Board of Trustees of the Plano Independent School District met in open session to approve the following resolution regarding approval of investment policies, investment strategies, investment brokers, and investment training providers. Whereas Section 2256.005, Subchapter E of the Texas Government Code
requires the board to annually review investment policy and investment strategies, and local board policy CDA requires an annual comprehensive report on the investment portfolio. The Board of Trustees of the Plano Independent School District reviewed the district's investment policy of CDA local and heard a presentation on portfolio performance for the 2017-2018 fiscal year at the October 2nd, 2018 regular meeting. The investment strategy for the 2018-19 fiscal year will continue to be: the district will continue to utilize the local government investment pools of TechStar, TexPool, and Lone Star, as well as the guaranteed government deposit program with Inova Financial to invest excess funds needed for short-term cash needs. The district's investment officers will continue to work with First Southwest Asset Management, a Hilltop Holdings company, under the investment advisory services contract in place with the district on the utilization of other approved investment instruments so as to ensure the safety of principal, maintain liquidity, maximize financial returns within the current market conditions, and provide maturity sufficient to meet anticipated cash flow requirements. Whereas Section 2256.005 Subchapter D of the Texas Government Code requires that the district shall designate one or more officers or employees as investment officers to be responsible for the investment of its funds. The following positions have been previously designated as investment officers: the Chief Financial Officer, the Executive Director of Financial Services, the Director of Accounting, and accountants, up to 2 individuals. Whereas Section 2256.008 Subchapter A of the Texas Government Code requires the investment officer to attend at least one training session from an independent source approved by the governing body and containing at least 10 hours of instructions within 12 months after taking office or assuming duties, and attend an investment training session not less than once in a 2-year period that begins on the first day of the local government's fiscal year and consists of the 2 consecutive fiscal years after that date, and receive not less than 10 hours of instruction relating to investment responsibilities, parentheses, 8 hours for schools and municipalities, parentheses closed. Independent providers of investment training are listed on Exhibit A. Whereas Section 2256.003 of the Texas Government Code requires the approval of authority to invest funds, approved broker-dealers and other providers are listed on Exhibit B. It is hereby resolved by the trustees of the Plano Independent School District that the above recitals are adopted as finding of fact and operative provisions hereof, and it is hereby further resolved by the trustees that the investment strategies stated above, and it is hereby resolved further by the trustees that the independent investment training providers, and it is hereby resolved further by the trustees that the qualified broker-dealers and other providers are passed and approved this 2nd day of October 2018 by the Board of Trustees of the Plano Independent School District.
Thank you, Ms. Humphrey. May I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees adopts the resolution approving investment policy, investment strategies, investment training providers, and investment broker-dealers.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion by Jerry Chambers, a second by Yoram Solomon, that the Board of Trustees adopts the resolution approving investment policy, investment strategies, investment training providers, and investment broker-dealers. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will now proceed to vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Thank you. The next item for discussion and action ensures the governance and administrative support of district goals. Item B1 is the consideration and possible board action to send notice of proposed termination for good cause of a term contract employee. Dr. Brotman.
Madam President, I would like to withdraw this item at this time. It's no longer needed.
Thank you. So this item has been pulled by administration and requires no action. Item B2 is to consider board approval of additional board advisory committee appointments for the year 2018. An additional board appointment has been noted on the attachment that you've received previously. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves the additional Board Advisory Committee appointment for 2018-2019 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a motion by Angela Powell, a second by Nancy Humphrey, that the Board of Trustees approves the additional Board Advisory Committee appointment for 2018-19 as presented. Is there any further discussion? We will now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Item B3 is considering board approval of board advisory committee goals for the 2018 school year. So the goals for the board advisory committees are presented for the board's consideration and approval. Before I jump into this, I just want to share with you that the board subcommittee that consisted of Angela and Jerry and myself met with administration to include Sarah Bonzer and Dr. Williams and the appropriate staff members associated with leading each of the board advisory subcommittees or advisory committees. So we consulted with one another and arrived at this conclusion. And so that is what is presented for your consideration as a goal for each of the particular committees. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves the Board Advisory Committee goals for the 2018-2019 school year as presented.
And do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion by Jerry Chambers, a second by Angela Powell, that the Board of Trustees approves the Board Advisory Committee goals for the 2018-19 school year as presented. Is there any further discussion?
I have two questions. One is, last year we talked about the advisory committees themselves suggesting the goals.
Yes.
And us approving. Was that the process this year as well?
That was the process. So they brought forward, you want to talk about that,
Sure.
Sarah?
What we did is we took each one of the committee's draft goals that were proposed for this year, and we made those the beginning of the goals for this year. We did make some slight revisions based on the committee discussions that when we held these meetings. Probably the biggest change was in the area of diversity, because there was a goal around SEL, but that is in the plan of work. And so we really needed to do work on cultural proficiency. And so we did make a recommended change on the diversity goal, but we embedded the other goal in another area. So that was really the main change, but everything else includes what they recommended.
Okay, one more question. There was a comment on the Student Health Advisory Committee that with the move of health for high school credit to 8th grade, the committee needed additional parent representatives for this committee, specifically from middle school. So are they working on it? And
Yes, I've been working with the PTA, Council of PTA, to recruit parents to submit to participate in this. And so we're still looking for additional parents.
Thank you.
Will those require board approval to get onto the advisory committee?
We can bring those back for approval.
But I think, Nancy, if it's pleasing to the board, if the names, Sarah reached out, did not get all the feedback that we hoped to get. So if it's pleasing to the board, if she gets that before the committees meet, let them meet, and then we'll just post.
Okay, that's why I asked. I didn't want to hold up the
No.
process, because it takes a month, it seems to have
I'll have to
Okay, good. Well,
Okay.
that's why I asked.
Is that okay? All right. Any other questions? All right. So we'll now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. We are now to item 11, policies. At most of our board meetings, we have policies on the agenda for the board's consideration. These policies presented have undergone prior review, by the district's attorney and by each board member. I invite Carla Oliver, Assistant Superintendent for Government, Community, and Planning Initiatives, to introduce the policies that we have on the agenda this evening. Ms. Oliver?
Thank you, President Bender. Tonight I bring to you TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 111, affecting local policies, and is presented for adoption under second reading this evening.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees adds, revises, or deletes local policies as recommended by TISB Policy Service and according to the instruction sheet for TISB Localized Policy Manual, update 111 with revisions as noted to policy BBD Local, board members training and orientation.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion by Nancy Humphrey, a second by Yoram Solomon, that the Board of Trustees adds, revises, or deletes local policies as recommended by TASB Policy Service and according to the instruction sheet for TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 111 with revisions as noted to policy BBD Local, board members training and orientation. Is there any further discussion? All right, we will now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Okay, item B is BE Local Board Meetings on second reading. Carla?
Actually, you just said it all.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees adopt policy BE Local under second reading.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion by Yoram Solomon, a second by Nancy Humphrey, that the Board of Trustees adopts policy BE Local under second reading. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Item C, FB Local, Equal Educational Opportunity on second reading. Carla?
There's only one slight revision made to this to clarify cross-references to policies, and it was at the attorney's recommendation.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees adopt policy FB Local under second reading.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Yoram Solomon, a second by Jerry Chambers, that the Board of Trustees adopts policy FB Local under second reading. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Last policy, D, FFA Local, Wellness and Health Services Physical Examinations on second reading. Carla?
This policy was revised to include general wording stating that Plano ISD will follow current guidelines from the Texas Department of State Health Services regarding mandated spinal screenings.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees adopt policy FFAA Local under second reading.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion by Yoram Solomon, a second by Nancy Humphrey, that the Board of Trustees adopts policy FFAA Local under second reading. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes all items for discussion and action. Last item on the agenda for discussion this evening is item 12, the conclusion of public comment session. At this time, we will be inviting the speaker who signed up prior to the start of the meeting in accordance with board policy to address the board. 15 minutes have been allotted for speakers wishing to address the board about topics relating to non-agenda items. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes. If you're not finished speaking at the end of 3 minutes, I will kindly interrupt you so that we can move to the next person. Ms. Oliver, do we have a comment card for non-agenda?
Yes, we do. I'd like to invite Glenda Copeland to the podium, please.
Okay, thank you. So right here, and so you'll have 3 minutes as I indicated, and our secretary, Ms. Humphrey, will keep time, and she'll alert you when you have a minute left.
Okay, I'll be very brief. Thank you. I'm a very concerned parent, and I'm here to let it be known that there has been a credible school shooting threat against Vines High School. There has been some investigation into this threat, but the concerned parents of Vines want to ask your help to do everything in your power to immediately and effectively remove the threat at Vines so that we can feel safe sending our kids to school there every day. Thank you.
thank you for your comments this evening. There is no further business before the board, and the meeting will be adjourned. The time is 8:14 p.m.